I remember the sound before the pain. A sharp crack, bone colliding with enamel, my head snapping back, and the sudden flood of blood filling my mouth. My father's face loomed so close I could see every pore, every twitch in his jaw. "You think you get to keep your paycheck when your sister needs it?" he growled, breath heavy with coffee and cigarettes. My knees buckled, my hand flying to my mouth as warm blood seeped through my fingers. The gap was instant, my front tooth gone. I wanted to tell him I'd already paid half her rent last month, bought groceries twice, and covered her phone bill. But before I could speak, my mother's voice cut in, sharp, almost gleeful. "Parasites should learn to obey," she said, smiling like she'd just scored a victory. Her eyes traveled over me as if I were filth on the carpet. Melissa, my sister, lounged on the couch with her phone, barely glancing up. "Don't get blood on the floor," she muttered. "It's gross." I tried to breathe through the pounding in my head, but my father's voice echoed over everything. "You'll transfer your whole salary tonight, or I'll make sure you can't work at all." Melissa smirked without looking up. "She's right, you can't let parasites walk around thinking they have rights." She and my mother laughed together like it was an inside joke. Blood dripped onto the white kitchen tile in tiny red splashes. I stumbled toward the sink for a paper towel, but my mom yanked the roll away. "That's for guests," she said flatly. I pulled a rag from under the counter. It smelled of mildew and grease. The metallic taste in my mouth made me gag. "You think I'm bluffing?" my father said, stepping closer. His shadow swallowed mine. "I'll call your boss right now and say you've been stealing. See how fast you're fired." Through tears, the ache in my mouth was nothing compared to the humiliation burning in my chest. Melissa chuckled, scrolling. "Make sure you tell him she's unstable too. Nobody hires a drama queen." I wiped my mouth, forcing my back straight despite my trembling. I wanted to scream, throw something, make them feel even a fraction of what they'd just done. But I knew better. They fed on reactions. They wanted me to beg. Instead, I met my father's gaze and said quietly, "You'll regret this." His eyes narrowed, a vein pulsing in his temple. "You're already regretting it," he said, tapping his tooth in mockery. My mother shook her head with a smirk. "You've always thought you were smarter than us. You're nothing without family. Remember that." Melissa finally set her phone down. "Let's make it easy," she said. "Just give me your banking password, I'll transfer it myself." I stared at her, disbelief twisting in my stomach. "You've lost your mind." Her expression hardened. "No, you've lost your place in this family, and it's about to get worse if you keep talking." I walked out slowly, holding my jaw. "Don't be late with that transfer," my dad called after me. Their laughter followed me down the hall, like nails in my spine. In my room, I locked the door and sank to the floor. The mirror caught my reflection, swollen lip, missing tooth, eyes brimming with rage. I touched the empty space in my mouth, and something settled in me. Not just pain. A quiet, burning clarity. For years they'd taken my money, my time, my dignity, calling it family duty. For years I believed if I gave enough, they'd see my worth. But tonight, with my tooth shattered on their kitchen floor, I understood. They would never stop. Unless I made them. And I wouldn't use fists or screaming. I would make them choke on something they couldn't spit out. I opened my phone, started a blank note, and typed the first pieces of a plan I'd never dared before. My hands still shook, but not from fear. I didn't sleep. The throbbing in my jaw kept time with each thought racing through my head. I lay in the dark, replaying every time they'd called me a leech, a burden, a mistake. By morning, the physical pain was background noise compared to the sharp, electric focus in my mind. When I stepped into the kitchen, my dad was at the table with his coffee, Melissa scrolling in her robe, and my mom flipping eggs like nothing happened. "Well," my dad asked, "transfer go through yet?" I didn't answer. I set my bag down, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. "You're not walking out without paying," he barked. I turned just enough to meet his eyes. "You'll get what's coming." He laughed like I'd told a joke. My mom smirked. She's finally learning to threaten like family. I drove to work, not to clock in, but because I knew the place inside out. Where the files were kept, who talked to whom, and who owed me favors. One person in particular owed me more than one. 3 years ago, I'd saved my coworker Trent's job by covering his massive mistake on a client order. He never forgot. When I told him what my family had done, his eyes went wide. That's insane. I think I can help. He leaned closer. You know that project you've been working on in secret? The one you never showed anyone? I nodded. It's good. Really good. If you want it to matter, we can make sure your name's on it in a way they can't touch. He was right. The project, an efficiency system I'd built for our biggest client, was mine. If it succeeded, it could be worth more than my entire year's salary. If my parents ever caught wind of it, they'd squeeze every drop they could from it. So instead of letting it become company property, I filed the intellectual rights that very afternoon. Under my own name, completely separate from work. That was step 1. Step 2 was personal. I started digging. Every time they boasted about their flawless reputation in town, I'd smile quietly. I knew the truth. The unpaid debts they never mentioned. The charity events they claimed to support but never did. The way Melissa maxed out other people's credit cards and called it borrowing. I had the proof, receipts, emails, even a few photos I'd kept without thinking. All I needed to do was connect the dots. At home, they mistook my silence for fear. That only made them bolder. Melissa would wave shopping bags in my face, purring. This is what your money's for. My mother would casually mention my empty bank account like it was a punchline. My father would pat my shoulder and whisper, better get used to it, parasite. I played along, sending them small amounts here and there, just enough to keep them certain I was still under their control. Meanwhile, I was building something they couldn't see. By week 3, the plan was finished. It wasn't about simply exposing them. That would be too easy. It was about stripping them of the one thing they cherished more than my money. Their control. I wanted them to watch as every door they thought they owned slammed in their faces. Melissa was first. She had an upcoming high-profile fashion event. Her supposed golden ticket to a modeling contract she'd been chasing for years. She bragged non-stop about it, telling everyone she'd finally be noticed. I made a single phone call, not to stop her from going, but to ensure that when she arrived, she'd find exactly what I had arranged. Then came my parents. They were hosting a dinner for the local business association. A night they'd hyped up as proof they were pillars of the community. Perfect. Not for them, for me. By that night, every lie, every cruel word, every shady deal would be sitting in the hands of the very people they wanted to impress. That morning, I looked in the mirror and still saw the missing tooth. But my eyes weren't those of the girl who'd taken their blows anymore. They belonged to someone who had stopped obeying. And they were about to learn exactly what happens when the parasite bites back. The night of the dinner, the house reeked of expensive catering and desperation. My mother wore pearls, my father a suit he couldn't afford, and Melissa floated around in her designer dress like a queen. They didn't even glance at me as I came down the stairs. You're not invited, my mother said without looking up. I smiled. Wouldn't miss it. My father's jaw clenched, but he let it go. They assumed I was there to grovel, to play nice in front of their guests. That was the beauty of it. By the time people began arriving, the dining room gleamed, silverware polished, crystal glasses lined in perfect rows. I stayed at the edge of the room, silent, watching. Every handshake from my father was an act. Every compliment from my mother a performance. Melissa was live streaming her outfit to her followers. Then I spotted him, Mr. Keller, the association president, the man whose approval my father had chased for years. In his hand was the thick, sealed envelope I'd sent 2 days before. Inside, unpaid contractor invoices they'd ignored, proof they'd siphoned charity funds into Melissa's account, audio clips of them bragging about manipulating neighbors. And just for effect, a handwritten quote from my mother. Parasites should learn to obey. Keller didn't confront them immediately. He waited until the room was full, then walked over to my father and handed him the envelope. I watched my father's face shift from smug to stone. My mother read over his shoulder, her pearls trembling. Melissa froze mid-laugh. The atmosphere changed. Whispers rippled through the crowd. A woman actually stepped back from my mother. My father tried to laugh it off, but Keller's voice cut through. Your name doesn't belong on our board, Tom. Not after this. I slipped out before they could spot me. crossing the street to the cafe where Trent waited. From our table, we had a perfect view of the house. Within 20 minutes, guests were leaving in tight clusters, some without saying goodbye. Melissa came out first, clutching her phone like a lifeline, her face blotchy from tears. She'd just been told the fashion event was full. No spots left. Not even for influencers. Interesting timing, considering her name had just been linked to credit card fraud. Then my parents emerged. My father's tie hung loose, his eyes darting around like he was searching for an escape. My mother's lipstick was smeared, her pearls gone. They stood there alone, the buzz of conversation gone with the crowd. For once, they weren't the center of attention. They were nobodies. I stepped outside, heels clicking on the pavement. When they saw me, my mother's mouth opened, but no words came. My father's voice cracked. You. I held up my phone. On the screen, a photo of my broken tooth, taken the night he'd knocked it out. Below it, one line. This is where it started. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I just looked at them the way they'd always looked at me, like they weren't worth the air they breathed. Then I walked past, brushing Melissa's shoulder just enough to make her flinch. By the time I reached the corner, I could hear my mother hissing at my father, her voice sharp and frantic. It didn't matter. Their perfect little empire had shattered, and there was no putting it back together. They had built their lives on control, and now they had none. And every time they remembered that night, they'd think about how they'd laughed in my face, until the parasite they thought they owned made them choke on their own pride. Please subscribe to our channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from.